viewers, how's it going? It's a pretty rainy day outside here, and it's autumn. Welcome to another Quickie video, and right now I want to use this opportunity to tell you the story about my cancer. The story starts on Halloween 2015, right at the end of the night. It was a very dissatisfying Halloween. I was just mad because nothing was going on, and so I decided to go out for a walk, see if I could find some action. I had no luck though. But then all of a sudden when I got home, just as I was starting to go to sleep, I all of a sudden got this horrible cough, and I took some medication for it. Excuse me. I took some medication for the cough, but it didn't help it go away. I took all sorts of stuff, and this cough, it just lasted for months and months on end. I thought I got an STD or something from a girl I ate out, but no. I don't know what I was thinking. That obviously wasn't an STD. So at the end of 2015, I got these coughing pills, and they seemed to help it go away very slowly, and I felt like I was feeling better. But then come spring of 2016, it came back, and it begun to get worse. Snot going down into my lungs constantly, and me having to cough it all up. And this lasted throughout the last days of me working at Kroger. I was pushing carts, and I was having a hard time breathing. I thought it was the pollen, and I was just coughing shit up. Always taking NyQuil and whatnot, and just couldn't figure out what was happening. And oh, it only gets worse from there. From there on, I developed insomnia, which started between spring and summer, and that progressively got worse. Then I started getting this really bad fever, and I always had to constantly keep taking ibuprofen and acetaminophen, and so we keep going to the doctors to see what's wrong, and just nobody's worried. Nobody can figure out what's wrong. And I start vomiting, and then I really start not getting any sleep. I just felt like I was dying. Couldn't breathe, couldn't sleep, was always coughing, hacking up shit, even coughed up blood on a couple occasions. But then the big turning point came on the week of July 4th, 2016. I think it was July 7th during the week or so. I don't know. I was in respiratory failure, and I couldn't breathe at all. I even went over to my friend's house, who was a registered nurse. She had a breathing machine, and she said I had to go to the emergency room as soon as possible. And then as soon as we arrived at the emergency room, I couldn't walk in. I needed to be wheeled in a wheelchair. And so they x-ray my chest, and they even drill into it, and it was there and then that we found out that it was, low iron and so many more things. It was just the worst case scenario. It was testicular cancer. And truth be told, I actually kind of already knew I had this. I had an enlarged testicle for years, but I didn't tell anybody because that's a private erogenous zone. Who'd want to tell anybody about that? It's embarrassing. And so I was at Gwinnett Medical Center for a couple of days, but I was beyond their care, so within a few days I got put on a ambulance to Emory over on Clifton, and they welcomed me there with smiling faces, but still, I was just in a terrible place, and I just wasn't smiling at all. And so I was in the Emory Hospital ICU for a couple days, and I was getting up and doing laps around the ICU area. Thought things were going to go well. I had my video games and whatnot, but then around that time I had a pulmonary embolism, and if y'all don't know what that is, that's a blood clot around here in my lungs. As soon as that happened, I had to be immediately put on a ventilator, and let me tell you, it's one of the most mentally scarring experiences in your life. And let me tell you, if you think sucking a dude's cock is pretty gross, well, you're going to like the idea of it after you've had a ventilator down your throat, because then it won't be so bad, because a cock can come out of your throat. A ventilator stays down it. and I was awake the whole time. And I'm still very scarred by it to this day. I have nightmares about it. I was just standing there with all these wires in me and just this tube down my throat. I couldn't talk, I couldn't move, I couldn't do anything. I just felt helpless. And so then within days I just pulled it out of my throat. I spit up deoxygenated blood, and then before you know it, I was in a medically induced coma for like over a week on an ECMO machine. And the Emory on Clifton is one of the few hospitals that has that, by the way. My legs, see here, see how muscular they are? They were like this after being in the medically induced coma for like 10 days or so. I was just confined to the bed. I had catheters in my dick. I had a tube up my ass. And yeah, just think of any superhero, supervillain origin story, or make it maybe more like anti-hero and supervillain. Yeah, that's kind of what that was like for me. So I was in ICU for like a week or two more. Then they moved me up to the normal hospital, which was more quiet, more like a hotel. And it was there and then that I slowly but surely got my appetite back. I could start eating normally again and not have to be fed through a fucking tube. But on the bright side, I had nurses that were around my age, very beautiful women, and to this day, I can't thank them enough for saving my life, even though staying in those hospitals is a cold, deafening experience, and I hated it. It saved my life, but I hated it. Within a week, my lungs got healed up enough that they discharged me, and then we would do outpatient chemo for the next few months. I was immobile for the most part. I had to have Lovenox injections in my stomach because of the blood clot. And then getting up super early in the morning to go do chemotherapy, which lasted like 2 months. And then I had a male wound care nurse come by and look at the pressure wound on my ass. Yeah, I forgot to tell you about that. Yeah, that was a fun experience. Of course, I lost my hair, but it grew back really quickly thanks to biotin. Mentally, it changed me in ways for the better, but in also some ways for the worse. So, there you go. There's the quick story about my cancer. Hopefully, I got all the details out and enough to keep y'all entertained. Bye. Golly, 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 golly.